Welcome to World History with Mr. Giese. In this episode, we will be discussing the phase of rebuilding of Europe after the Congress of Vienna in 1815. By the end of the video, you'll be able to understand the common themes of nationalism and independence throughout Europe at this time. Before we get into the details of what was going on in Europe, let's discuss what nationalism is. Nationalism, by definition, is a devotion to one's national group. There are several elements that make up nationalism, the first one being culture, or shared beliefs and a way of life. The second is history, or shared past. Third would be religion, so a common faith-based belief. Language, spoken or written. And territory, shared land with a defined border. All these have the possibility to give a group of people a sense of unity. Now that we have an understanding of nationalism, let's get back to Europe. As we discussed in class, after Napoleon was defeated, Europe needed to be rebuilt. This led to an effort to organize the continent to establish order. All throughout Europe, there were, and still are, many different cultures and ethnicities, some close to each other and some not. In order to keep control, these pockets of people were parts of a larger empire. While they may be a part of the same empire, conflicting views, varying cultures, and different languages could all lead to conflict within the empire. In the case of Italy, a whole group of people could be split between numerous empires looking to expand with very little attention to the conflicting cultures. Kings, emperors, or czars would control these large empires by absolute control, and the people had very little say. With the different cultures being lumped into the same empire, the people of these empires often experienced difficult living conditions. In Russia, serfdom, where serfs were considered part of the land on which they worked, was a system that they used. Serfs were controlled by the lords who owned the land. Serfs were not legally considered property, but they were not allowed to leave the land on which they were born. It wasn't slavery, but as you could see, the conditions were similar. Because of these poor living conditions and the drive to become independent, more and more groups developed a greater sense of nationalism and were looking for a change. As these ideas of independence emerged, they were often met with violent force from their leaders. This stopped them at the time, but it did not rid the idea of independence. Throughout Europe, leaders realized these ideas and revolutionaries were not going away. To try to pacify these movements, the promise of reform and change emerged. Promises of constitutions and freedom or liberties were often discussed, but leaders did not normally follow through. You see, it was enough to allow the tensions to die down, and then these leaders could go back to ruling the way that they wanted to. This may have worked for the time, but as you will find out, this will not be the end of problems in Europe.